Aha! Welcome back to another episode of Starlight Beacon here on another Star Wars Sunday on Certified Gumbo's channel. How you doing? We didn't do a stream yesterday. We didn't do a stream Friday either. So this is the first stream of the weekend. I had a pretty good weekend. I hope everybody else had a good weekend. This is my birthday weekend, of course. If you don't know, my birthday is May 4th. Ironically, I guess it was determined that I be a Star Wars fan, being that my birthday is on May the 4th. So yeah, I'm gearing up for that, getting ready for the Bad Batch. Um, Greater Good that came in last week. Day, what was that? The 27th, whenever day it was, whatever day it came out. I got my copy in the mail, and I started reading it. And once again, Timothy Zahn delivers. This is a really good follow up to the first book. I think this is going to be another strong trilogy of novels from Zahn, especially on the character of Thrawn, which he writes so well. Personally, for me, I like this Ascendancy trilogy better than these books. And let me move my book. These books, which were this is the newer trilogy of books by Timothy Zahn. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the character of Thrawn, he was first introduced back in with the late 90s with Heir to the no, was it late 80s? Couple it was yeah, I think it was about 80 something. I don't know. I read these books like in the 2000s, but Grand Admiral Thrawn was introduced into the Star Wars universe with the first book called Heir to the Empire, which was kind of sort of a well, many people regard that trilogy as the true sequel to the originals, and that's not anything to do with how I may or may not feel about the sequel trilogy. This has been the case since these books came out. A lot of people view this as a true, sequel to the original films. Grand Admiral Thrawn was introduced. He's a very different character. If I had to describe Thrawn to anyone who is unfamiliar, I would say he is a cross between Sherlock Holmes, Picard from Star Trek, and Spock. I would say those three characters kind of sort of sum up Thrawn and his character and his kind of sort of disposition. The Ascendancy trilogy in series, the last book comes out November 16th of this year. This trilogy in many ways highlights the Chiss Ascendancy, which is the alien species that Thrawn is from, and it does so in more depth than we've gotten in the in Star Wars thus far. We haven't really dove too deeply into the Chiss, into the Ascendancy. They've always been described as sort of isolationist, secretive. They keep to themselves. They don't really interact with the known galaxy. I can't recall if they created the chaos for these series of books, or was the chaos something that was in the original novels. I'm not sure. But they've always been sort of kind of isolated to their own sector of space, and they don't interact with the rest of the galaxy too much. That's always been kind of sort of the lore and the mythos of the Chiss as a species, which it's always been cool. But now, for the first time, we get a little more insight into how their society operates, and they are in many ways the Vulcans of the Star Wars universe. Like, they just seem to display a level of intellect that is superior to the average human. I mean, I think throughout these books that they've pretty much illustrated that even the lesser intelligent of the Chiss are probably somewhat on par with some of like the smartest humans in the galaxy. So like intellectually they are a force to be reckoned with, and they have this level of mythos that in the chaos there's this reverence for the Chiss, similar to how the known galaxy talks about the Jedi, which I've always found fascinating. I like that aspect of it. Like I like what Star Wars is doing in terms of sort of creating a mythos around other groups and characters outside of the Jedi and the Sith and the Republic and the Empire. We're seeing the Mandalorians get more notoriety and sort of an increased level of mythos within mainstream canon. Same thing with the Chiss through these novels. Like the Chiss now are starting to gain this level of prominence, and they're going to get more credit and level of prominence and awareness with the upcoming Ahsoka series, which I'm going to talk about a little bit because I think that these books, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think these books are setting up sort of kind of a, if you are familiar with Thrawn from the Heir to the Empire books, the new Thrawn, he still exhibits the same level of military prowess and skill, and his mind and his intellect as a tactician is still very high and very strong. However, one of the big differences is his loyalties are not to the Empire anymore. They're to the Chiss. And personally, I like that. I like that he is more loyal to his people than he is to the Empire. That can create longevity for the character and for the Chiss. They're setting up a lot of other characters that we could see appear in the Ahsoka series. They have so in these actually 5 novels. Like there's a lot of recurring characters in the Ascendancy trilogy that is in this newer, well, the older new trilogy, the first canon trilogy of the Disney era. That's probably the best way I can describe it, because we've already had one trilogy that was kind of sort of, well, it is Legends now, and it seems like they're retroactively trying to bring the Heir to the Empire story into canon, but they're doing they're putting their own spin on it. So where the original trio of Han, Luke, and Leia were pretty much the main protagonists in that, the crew of the Ghost and Ahsoka and probably Rex and some other familiar characters, maybe some characters from The Mandalorian, are going to be featured more prominently in this. But I'll get into that speculation later into the episode. This book is a very good sequel, and I think that the November 16th finale, I'm looking forward to reading that. I flew through this book, and I think for people who weren't necessarily on board with this newer trilogy as older fans of Thrawn and as fans of Heir to the Empire, I think you'll like this Ascendancy trilogy. One, primarily because of it exhibits his prowess and his tactical mind more so than the other trilogy, because the other trilogy was about this trilogy here that I'm referring to, the Thrawn trilogy. It kind of sort of highlighted how Thrawn had to navigate through the Empire in his early days, coming in from the unknown regions, him navigating the political landscape, him just not understanding how politics works and how things, how they can interfere with the military operations of the Empire, if you will. And that's pretty much always been his Achilles heel. He doesn't understand like political maneuvering and backstabbing. Like he that's always crippled his character. That's always been like his weakness. But on the battlefield, he's untouchable. And you get a lot more of that in this newer trilogy than you did in this one, or not in this one, but in the Thrawn books, because these Thrawn books focus more on his relationship between Tarkin, Vader, and the Emperor, and then a lot of times questioning where his true loyalties lie. And he kept that close to the chest because his true loyalties are with the Chiss, and that's the biggest difference between his character in these newer novels than his character in his original incantation when we were first introduced to him in the Heir to the Empire series. in Heir to the Empire, he was a true Imperial loyalist. He was a diehard Imperial loyalist. And through those writings, we got a lot. I guess you got a different perspective of the Empire, and you began to empathize. Well, I did, for one. I empathize more with the Imperial characters in those novels because they kind of humanize the Imperial characters in the novels. And him as a leader, he wasn't brutal, and he still isn't brutal. He's not a brutal, like, evil for the sake of evil type of person. He's there to be a military genius. And as a leader, no matter what side of a conflict you're on, like, you want someone like Thrawn calling the shots, because he's always got your best interest as a soldier and someone under his command in at heart. Like, he's not going to waste. He doesn't look at his troops and the people under his command as like expendable. And neither do the Chiss, which I think is an interesting aspect of them. Like, they take losses very seriously. Like, they don't like to go into situations where it's unwinnable or there'll be heavy casualties. Like, that level of preparedness that Thrawn exhibits throughout his run as a character is on full display, and it comes from the Ascendancy. I would say that the Chiss Ascendancy is like it would be like the best version of the Empire. Like, they are an authoritative, aristocratic government, but because of the dynamics of how they operate and function as a society, it works better in the Ascendancy than it does in the Empire, because the Empire, for one, was a fledgling, authoritative governing body, whereas the Chiss have been this way for thousands of years. So we get a lot more of that. You get a understanding of the family rule and the family dynamics and the hierarchy and the 9 ruling families, the 40 lesser families, and then it's the rest of the Ascendancy, where they don't really have much of a say. Like, the 40 ruling families, this is kind of something from the books. It's not a spoiler. But the 40 is something I think they were introduced in the first book, but definitely are kind of sort of elaborated more on in the second book. They're kind of sort of families that have at some point throughout Chiss history ruled or been in a ruling position. Right now, as it stands, there are only 9 ruling families. They explain there have been as much as 12, and I think as few as 1. And that's all I'll say, because if I say anything else, though, then I'll start getting into spoilers territory. But I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This has been Thrawn is always a fun character to read, and the mystery that they intertwine into the combat, because it's not really about the combat that happens within the book. It's always about like the mystery and anticipation and everything that's going on that leads to the battle, and trying to see what Thrawn is seeing, and trying to get into Thrawn's head and kind of anticipate what it is he's going to do when it comes time to battle. Like, what it is he sees. Like, he can look at a piece of artwork and make connections between a culture and a society, and how they may or may not operate within a combat scenario, which has always been it's a cool aspect of his character. Just the way he's able to do that type of stuff. Like, that's always been a cool fundamental aspect of who he is and what he does as a character. So that's pretty much it. I highly recommend this book, and I think that if you are a Thrawn fan, but you've been hesitant to get into the new novels, I think if you're familiar with the character of Thrawn, you could start with the Ascendancy books, like, because these books just kind of sort of, I would say that this first trilogy of books here is a nice reintroduction to the character, and for people who are unfamiliar with Thrawn, this is a good entry point because these are canon and these tie into the main story. Because these take place between episode 3 and episode 4, so and right before the Rebels animated show, which I'm a huge fan of. And then these books, put those right there. These books are the Ascendancy books, and I like these more than I like these books personally, just because they explore some new aspects of the Chiss and of Thrawn, and we get a more in-depth look into the past of Thrawn and his history with the Ascendancy and just his background within the Ascendancy. And it explains in many ways, I'm trying not to spoil anything, why it is he is so loyal to the Chiss. And also it kind of hints at some things that may come into play later down the road. And by later down the road, I mean during the same time period as The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka show. Which I'll probably get into that now. Let's speculate a little bit. But yeah, if you are a first comer to Thrawn and you want to know more about Thrawn, definitely start with these books and then get into the Ascendancy stuff, because there are some spoilers. There are a lot of spoilers in this trilogy for these books. So if you're new, first time reading Thrawn, start with these books and then go to the Ascendancy books. If you are a returning and long-time fan of Thrawn, then start with the Ascendancy novels, because you're not going to be behind the curveball, or what is it, the 8-ball? What's the expression? You'll be able to follow along, basically, because this is really just this is a very, very young Thrawn, right before he enters the service into the military. And these books take place during the Clone Wars. And really sometime between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And I'm speculating that this is probably right after Anakin and Padme get married. That's the rough timeline for it. So right at the height of the Clone Wars, but pretty much before Ahsoka becomes Anakin's Padawan. I won't say why I think that's the timeline. So yeah, that's it. May the 4th be with you. Hey, Ma. Thank you for tuning in. So yeah. So all right. So now let's speculate a little bit on the character of Thrawn, given what I've read in that book. Well, these 5 books, really. Okay, so here's where my head is. Speculation down. Let me adjust this. I just see something. 1 second. All right. Okay. That was bothering me. Alrighty. So now that I'm in Speculation Town, I'm done with the spoiler review, or the non-spoiler review. I may do I don't know. I won't make any promises, but if I do a spoiler review, it'll probably be after the trilogy, because I want to kind of sort of digest the 3 books and get the series in its completion. So November 17th is when that November 16th is when the last book will come out. I'll be getting that and reading that, and then after that I'll probably do some type of overarching spoiler conversation about this, about the Ascendancy novel. But overall, thus far, I like this a lot better than the newer books, only because it's not the writing or anything like that. It's primarily because it explores a lot of new things about Thrawn and his background, and as well as the Chiss and the Chiss Society, because we don't really know much about their society. The Chiss Society has not been something that they've ever covered in depth, even in Legends. We've gotten some tidbits here and there, and a lot of it, is told through the lens of Thrawn and what he's revealed about the Chiss and the Chiss people. And then they've appeared in some video games here and there, and they've also been featured in some, I believe, some comic book runs and some other, but not prominently featured like they are in this novel. That being said, the Ahsoka show comes out in 2022. I think they said first quarter. And the last book in this trilogy comes out in November. I'm speculating that Dave Filoni and the story group at Lucasfilm are not ignoring what's being written in these Thrawn novels. Now, I know a couple months ago, Timothy Zahn said that they hadn't contacted him directly in terms of Thrawn appearing in the Ahsoka show and, gotten his feedback on the character or gotten some advisement on how he should be written or portrayed in the story. But I don't think that means they are ignoring what he's writing and what he's done with this character, because Dave Filoni, for one, likes using the source material and likes trying to be true to, everything that is current in the lore. And I think the character of Thrawn is being built up to be similar, and I'm talking about the Ahsoka show. I think he's being built up to be what he was in the Heir to the Empire saga. And in the Heir to the Empire saga, like I said, he was a Imperial loyalist and a diehard Imperial. In the new canon, he is a very much a Chiss loyalist, and his loyalties lie with his people, and that's not going to change. That's just inherent to who he is and his character. And a lot of what this first trilogy explored is how he had to mask his loyalties when he was talking to the Emperor and to Vader, and convince them that he is on their side because he believes that they're on his side and that they can help each other. And when I say they, I mean the Empire and the Ascendancy. Because right now there's a veiled threat that is attacking the Chiss, and this book, the Ascendancy trilogy, is exploring the beginnings of that threat. And in these books, it's kind of sort of somewhere in the middle, like it's ongoing, and it's a very touchy and pivotal time within the Ascendancy, because I think this threat has become very prominent by this time point, by this time period. And so, one, I think Thrawn is going to be marketed as the big bad and as the main villain of the Ahsoka show. I think that's how it will be marketed, but I don't think that's going to be the case, because in these books, Thrawn is very much a hero. Like, the way he is written, he is a hero, and it's going to be hard for me, as someone who's reading these novels and is up on canon and know how Thrawn is being written now, to accept the same version of Thrawn that we got in the Heir to the Empire trilogy. That mainly being because he is such a loyalist to his people. I want to see that continue in live action. Like, I don't want him to be a diehard Imperial. I want him to be loyal to his people and stay true to what's being written in these books, because I think him being a Chiss loyalist adds another dynamic to to his character that makes him way more compelling. Even though he was already compelling, like, it just adds another layer that I appreciate, because the only reason why he's even approached the Empire is because he thinks that they are the best government outside of the chaos, which is the area of space that the Chiss ascendancy is. And to explain the chaos, there was basically thousands of years ago, or maybe 1,000 years ago, I'm not sure, it was a while ago, that there was this chain reaction or cataclysm within that side of the galaxy, where a cluster of supernova or stars went supernova, and it caused a chain reaction of stars to go supernova, and it cut that entire aspect, or that entire area of the galaxy, off from the rest of known space. The Chiss call this area the chaos because of obviously the big event, the chaotic event, and the area outside of the chaos they call lesser space, but we call that area the known galaxy. That's where the adventures of Luke Skywalker and Anakin and all our favorite heroes takes place. Everything that we have seen in Star Wars, especially in the mainstream, has been in known space or lesser space. Nothing has taken place in the chaos. We haven't seen anything in the chaos, minus, I would say, I think there's some, I think you can go to Casilla, which is the Chiss homeworld in Star Wars The Old Republic, but so few people have ever played that game that, well, not so few, a lot of people play that game, but most of the people who watch and consume Star Wars content haven't played that game. And so we don't really know about this area of space, and that game isn't even canon, so whatever they do in live action, I'm pretty sure is going to be awesome. And I think that, you know, because of how Thrawn is being positioned, and we know that he is the big bad, and all the fans of Thrawn have always talked about, you know, his dealings with the Empire and how he took on the New Republic during his reign as Grand Admiral within the Empire after the events of Return of the Jedi. That's what they want to continue to push from a marketing standpoint. But I think by the end of the Ahsoka show, he will no longer be the main villain, and I think the main threat is going to be this threat that is plaguing the Ascendancy, whoever this masked villain is. I would say the name, but I'm not going to say who this is because that would be a spoiler. And I'm not saying that this is an absolute. I don't have any sources. I can't back this up, other than, you know, just based on what I've read and how much they're building up the Ascendancy. It's hard for me to say that they're going to ignore it, because it would be an entire deviation of his character, and it would entirely retcon everything that Timothy Zahn has written so far in these 5 new novels. And there will, it will be 6 by the time the Ahsoka show comes out. So I'm pretty sure the story group, well, definitely the story group, but I'm sure Dave Filoni is also aware of how Thrawn is being written and his exploits with the Ascendancy, and the Grisk being the big bad out in the chaos. And the last we saw Thrawn in live action in the current timeline was in Rebels, and his fate was undecided, him and another hero, which is why in season 2 of The Mandalorian, Ahsoka is asking the regent or the governor, whoever that was, where Thrawn is, because he would know where this hero is who she and Sabine Wren are looking for, and they're going to be looking for in this show. That is kind of sort of where my head is with this, but I believe that he would be positioned as the big bad. But I think that they'll find out that in the Ahsoka show that Thrawn has gone back into the chaos, into the Ascendancy. What I personally would like to see is him building Imperial Star Destroyers for the Ascendancy. Like, I think the perception will be that he's creating this armada that is going to be for the Empire and for the Imperial Remnant. But I think the reality is he's actually taking the this technology of the Empire into the Ascendancy to kind of to reverse engineer a lot of it, because a lot of the technology that they have in the chaos is outdated in comparison to what's going on in lesser space. Sith Gaming, what's going on? So personally, I think Thrawn knows that part of the reason why he went into lesser space was to make an alliance. That was explored in these first books, in this first trilogy. And then the second trilogy, we're seeing a lot more detail in how outdated a lot of the tactics and armament of the Ascendancy are in comparison to the rest of space. And he talks about in these books, in this first trilogy, Thrawn talks about how the Star Destroyers are a lot more advanced than the Chiss warships in some regards. There are some advantages to the warships that the Chiss use. They're smaller, they're heavily armed, and they're more agile, but the overall, and they can be crewed by fewer people than the Star Destroyers can. But the Star Destroyers have longer range weapons. They are a great frontline, they can take a beating. They have shielding that is more advanced than what the Chiss use on their ships. And I think he, knowing this, and by this time period of the Ahsoka show and the Mandalorian, Tarkin is dead, the Emperor is dead, and Vader are gone. And those are the only people he's ever had to report to within the Empire. So now that he doesn't have to answer to anyone, he has, the opportunity of a lifetime to actually take the technology and the weaponry of the Empire and bring it to the Chiss to help them better equip themselves against this threat that the Grisk present to the Ascendancy. Because as I've stated in the show earlier, Thrawn is very much a Chiss loyalist, more so than he was in the original novels. Thanks, Sith. Yeah, so that's kind of sort of, I hope that's what they explore. I hope that the Ahsoka show goes into the chaos, leaving known space, going into another region of the galaxy that we haven't seen much in live action or in the mainstream content at all. It would also allow, depending on how they want to stage this conflict, it could explain why Ahsoka and the other heroes of this show aren't around during the sequel trilogy, because they're out in the chaos. Like, this could be something that is so insidious that it took many years for them to kind of sort of end it before it spilled over into the main galaxy. That is, for me, that's the most logical step for this show to go. Like, you've got to explain how and where a lot of these heroes were during the sequel trilogy that they're most likely going to showcase in this Ahsoka show. And depending on what Mandalorian season 3 does, which I believe it will be following more, we'll see a lot more of the Mandalorian culture. I think we'll probably be going to Mandalore, their home world, at some point during season 3, and that may actually be what season 3 is about: retaking Mandalore from the Imperial remnant. That just seems like the most logical thing. And then, depending on what they do in the Ahsoka show, I think by the end of it, Thrawn won't be viewed as the villain, but they'll have to form a necessary alliance, because I think he will have convinced the heroes, Ahsoka and probably Hera, definitely Sabine, and everyone else, the entire the crew of the Ghost. We'll probably see a lot more characters from Rebels appear in the Ahsoka show than, which is going to be cool. I think a lot more. I think Zeb could appear. I think we'll definitely see Ezra. And I think we'll probably find Ezra a lot earlier. That might be the mid-season thing in the show, the way I'm playing this out in my head. There'll be a lot of Ahsoka and Sabine in the team looking for leads to get to Thrawn, and I think that Thrawn will be in the chaos, and they'll have to navigate, and Ahsoka's gonna have to use the Force basically to navigate into this sector of space. And I think, I'm not sure, I don't know if Exegol is in the chaos, but that scene in Rise of Skywalker where they are navigating through that wild area of space to get to Exegol, that is pretty much what it's like to navigate through the chaos. And so they're going to have to they use a lot of jump by jump. So jump by jump is they go from one system to the next closest system to the next closest system just to navigate the safer areas of space. Because it's not like the known galaxy. Like they have a lot more dangers out in space that they have to navigate through that people in the known galaxy don't have to deal with on a regular basis. So yeah, Stormy, what's going on? I've already given my review of the book, and I'm speculating on how and where Thrawn is going to appear in the Ahsoka show. Like I said, Thrawn being a red herring is my theory. He's going to be the red herring villain of the show, but by the end of it, he won't be the villain, or at least we, the viewers, will not view him as a villain. I think there'll be some sort of alliance formed out in the chaos between the Ghost crew from Rebels, Ahsoka, and Thrawn and his task force, as well as probably some former Imperials that were under his command. I think we'll see some of them from the book pop up in the Ahsoka show in some capacity. What else could happen? I think that with Thrawn, the perception is that Thrawn is still an agent of the Empire. I don't think that would be the case. And honestly, if they want to keep this character around, which I think this is what they are planning to do, given how they've changed his character to make him more of a more of a loyalist to his own people than the Empire, which I think is a smart move from a marketing standpoint and from like a business standpoint, because now you've got more of a neutral hero, like just a lawful type of character that can really, play both sides. Like he can, whoever he aligns himself with has the advantage given who he is and what he is and how just brilliant he is as a military tactician, that you want him on your side. But I think him being an Imperial loyalist really truncates his character and makes it a little difficult to keep him. Whereas if you make him a Chiss loyalist and he's just like, look, at the end of the day, my only concern is for my own people and the safety of the Ascendancy, and anyone who can offer a legitimate helping hand to the Chiss is a friend of mine. Like, you, I will not view as an enemy. And for everyone else in the galaxy, that's a good thing, because you don't want this dude on your bad side, on his bad side. Yeah. Anyway, you don't want him after you, because that's just a no-win scenario. Just how brilliant he is as a tactician. Cool. Let's see. Thrawn is such a great character. I think Thrawn won't be in the first season of Ahsoka. I think we'll get an Ezra and Thrawn show first that will lead up to season 2 of Ahsoka. I don't know about that. I think that Thrawn will be in the first season of the Ahsoka show, and I think that he will be positioned as the main bad. And by the end of the show, he won't be seen as such. I think the show will go into the chaos. In, the show taking place inside of the chaos, away from the known galaxy, is a way for them to not only keep Ezra and Ahsoka alive beyond the sequels, but to also keep Thrawn and the Chiss alive and make them more of a heroic type of force that you can root for, that they can market and that they can sell, as opposed to having them be an outright villain. And so I think, one, it expands the lore, because I think they have to go into the chaos, and I think they have to explore other areas of space, other areas of the galaxy, just to expand the overall lore of the franchise. And I think that this show, the Ahsoka show, is the perfect way to do that. They've already done that with the Mandalorian in some ways, by creating some sort of almost like a pocket of space that is almost, well, not really, but kind of sort of unaffected in many ways by what's going on with the Skywalker saga. I think the Mandalorian show overall isn't that affected by the Skywalker saga, if you exclude Luke going off and rescuing Grogu. Outside of that, really, it's kind of sort of, it deals with the consequences of the Skywalker saga more so than it is directly impacted. It's kind of sort of like a ripple effect of the Skywalker saga, if you will. And then the chaos, like, none of what happens in the main galaxy affects what goes on in the chaos. Like, they are completely separate from everything else going on in the galaxy. Like, I would describe the Chiss Ascendancy as kind of sort of like the ancient Chinese dynasties that were isolated, and they were so isolated that eventually they fell kind of behind technologically. And then when the British showed up with their advanced warships and advanced weaponry, like, they weren't prepared to deal with that threat. That's kind of sort of the Chiss, and that seems like how they've how Thrawn has been, or not Thrawn, but Zahn has been writing the Ascendancy novels, kind of sort of using the ancient Chinese dynasties as an inspiration for the Ascendancy as a government, and just their state. Like, they have the military prowess, they've got the long years of governing that the Empire definitely doesn't have, because they talk about the Ascendancy and how long they have been out in the chaos and how long they have been such a prominent force out there, and they are revered out in the chaos, that that they've pretty much got this thing figured out and nailed down. They understand how an aristocratic government is supposed to work, and they've got the formula. Like, and I would like to, I just think it's just a good opportunity for them to explore a little bit more of the rest of the universe and the rest of the galaxy, and do something that won't really affect the rest of the galaxy. Because if you go out into chaos, they can tell any type of story they want to out in the chaos, and whatever happens is not going to spill over into the main galaxy unless they want it to. And I think they could. I just feel like that's a smart move, like, for this time period. Like, we've got 30 years between the sequels. Why not tell a story that doesn't take place in the known galaxy, where you can have a little bit more freedom and, not have to worry about, the Skywalker legacy, really, and the Skywalker saga, because none of that really affects the chaos. So, and then Ahsoka can, having Ahsoka, Thrawn, and Ezra team up in the chaos is like, I mean, who doesn't want to see that? And then at the same time, you've got an opportunity to set up a really strong villain or governing body out in the chaos, that if they're a threat to the Chiss, then they're definitely a threat to the rest of the galaxy, just because of how just fundamentally the Chiss as a society, they operate so much better than the Galactic Empire, that if anything can threaten them, then of course that force that threatens the Chiss is going to be a threat to the rest of the galaxy. So if you in the Ahsoka series kind of sort of unconcluded and undecided, and let's say expand that conflict or that story to run concurrent with the sequel trilogy, then whatever happens at the end of it could have consequences or repercussions outside of the chaos, if that's the route they wanted to go. And it's a way to introduce to fans to the Ascendancy, introduce fans to Thrawn, introduce a lot of more fans to Ahsoka, introduce a lot more fans to Ezra and Sabine. You could have tie-ins and crossovers between the Ahsoka show and the Mandalorian show that don't really affect the Skywalker saga. So, like, as long as they detach these stories from the Skywalker saga, they can kind of sort of do whatever they want to, because these stories will be in their own bubble. And I think it's a smart move, because one, for me, the Star Wars galaxy has always had an issue with feeling too small. Even before the Disney acquisition, all of these stories pretty much took place on the same worlds. They pretty much take place in the same galaxy. I think the Empire and the Republic were just realistically too large to even, like, if you want to critique it, like, they are unrealistically sized, in my opinion, for them to have the amount of governance and the number of systems within their control within a galaxy. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're like hundreds of trillions of star systems and planets. And yeah, I understand that this is a large governing body, but there have to be limits, and there still need to be areas of the galaxy that are unaffected by what happens. And no matter, scale is a thing that they have to address, and I hope that they can see that. And I think they are. I think proof of the Mandalorian is kind of sort of proof of that. They are like, look, we gotta kind of sort of expand this galaxy, tell some stories that aren't directly affected by the Skywalker saga, show some areas of space that are unfamiliar to the rest of the galaxy, introduce new planets. Like, they don't have to introduce new planets that are similar to planets that we've seen before, but them creating events and stories that don't necessarily have any impact on the main saga make everything feel, scale wise, more realistic, in my opinion. And I think the chaos is a perfect example of that, because it's the way it's written. Everything that happens within the chaos has no effect or repercussions outside of it, and vice versa. Like the Ascendancy trilogy takes place during the Clone Wars, but none of the events of the Clone Wars have any effect on what happens out in the chaos. They don't even know about it. The only person really that knows about the Clone Wars is Thrawn, and I can't say more than that without spoilers. So, uh, that's a cool thing. Also, too, them exploring new ways and different ways people use the Force. They talk about the Beyond, which I think is also a reference that the acolytes of the Beyond were something that the was introduced in the sequel trilogy, or in the Aftermath novels. I can't. Yeah, it was the Aftermath novels. They introduced the acolytes of the Beyond, and in the Chaos, they also talk about the Force as the Beyond. So I think there's a parallel there. You also have the Chiss Skywalkers, which are navigators, all female, ages I think from, I want to say 7 or 8 to 14 to 15. The Chiss, for whatever reason, the males lose force sensitivity at a really, really young age, and the females lose sensitivity like after they turn 15, 16, somewhere in that age range. But they can use the Force to navigate through the chaos. And so the Expansionary Defense Force, or fleet, uses the Chiss females as Skywalkers, is what they call them, to navigate through space, because they walk through the sky using the Force. And that they actually call attention to that in the book, and they draw a parallel between Anakin Skywalker and the Skywalkers. That only the readers, it's only explained to the readers. Thrawn doesn't explain it. I almost got into spoiler territory again. Dang, this is hard. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many aspects of the lore that they are continuing, or that Zahn is continuing to expand with these novels, that I'm hoping they pick up on in the Ahsoka show. Because for me, like, if they don't have this, if the Ahsoka show does not take place in the chaos, and if Thrawn is not a Chiss loyalist and he is, you know, positioned as a true imperialist, then it completely retcons all of these books, and there's no way. That just doesn't make sense. Like, that seems like it's a complete waste of the effort. Like, if that was going to be the case, then they shouldn't make these books canon. But because they are canon, then that means, you know, I expect that how the character is written and everything, all these stories and everything they're building up in these books, is going to have repercussions elsewhere in the galaxy, and that they're going to stay true to how things are being portrayed in these novels when we see Thrawn on screen again. There were some minor differences, I'd say, in Thrawn's portrayal on Rebels versus how he was portrayed in these first 3 books, but that's primarily because these books came out after Thrawn appeared in the show, and then Zahn kind of sort of takes some of those events and retroactively changes them a little bit, or at least the explanation of why things happen the way they do, in order to fit how he's writing the character now. And so, since that's in the past, and now we're getting books that will come out before we see Thrawn again in a new time period, being, you know, right after the events of Return of the Jedi, you know, with 6 books, because that, you know, the last book is done. It's just not going to be published and, you know, available to the public till November. With all 6 of these books now completed, they would have had time to read and understand what it is that Zahn is doing with this character and incorporate that into their story, because it is from the words of Lucasfilm that the reason why they made everything Legends was so that they could make a more cohesive and tied together timeline that was easier to follow, which I've always been on board with, because there are so many different stories and characters and events that happen in Legends, that some of which I like. A lot of what was written in Legends I liked, and then there was some that I was too fond of. That, you know, them being more cohesive and more strategic about how they tell these stories moving forward, that made sense to me. I'm 110% on board with that, because continuity is very important, and sometimes there were moments where stuff would get retconned in Legends, and then someone would retroactively retcon the retcon, and it just kind of got messy, because at a certain point in time, it's kind of like certain authors are like competing with who's right and who's wrong. With this format, you know, we got one voice, and that's Lucasfilm and the story group. So you have created, this is one of the few instances where a character has been changed, but those changes weren't negative. And I feel like these changes actually make the character a lot stronger and a lot more dynamic than he was. And he was a very dynamic character in his original incantation. So now you've got an even stronger character whose loyalties are even less so, or even more ambiguous than they were before. Why would you not use that and incorporate that into his character moving forward? I just think it's a strange and unnecessary deviation, and you are really missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime by, you know, giving the fans or robbing the fans of some stories that would really kind of sort of be different than what we've gotten, a lot different than what we're accustomed to getting within the Star Wars live action sphere. We are used to these stories as, you know, avid readers or fans of the other publications and the other mediums in which Star Wars has been used, you know, whether that be video games, novels, graphic novels, comic books, what have you, animation. We've gotten accustomed to just a diversity of stories and different types of characters and things of that nature. Now we've got an opportunity to bring all of that into the live screen, into the to the mainstream live action format. Why would you deviate from it? So that's kind of sort of where my theory is on this. This is kind of sort of where my head is. Like, the Ahsoka show, in my opinion, has to take place in the chaos. Like, let's go to the Chiss. Let's see Ahsoka become a hero alongside the Thrawn and Ezra out there in the unknown regions. Well, not the unknown, because I think the unknown regions that's a different region of the galaxy than the chaos. So, yeah. And they don't really know about the Jedi and the chaos. So it'd be kind of cool to see, you know, Ezra and Ahsoka go out into the chaos and showcase, you know, the true potential of what the Jedi are, and, you know, give some notoriety to the order out in the chaos. I think that would be a cool thing. There's also some references to, within this book, last thing, to the conflict from the Old Republic between the Sith Empire and the Republic before it became the Galactic Republic, and the alliance the Chiss had with the Sith Empire prior to the events the chaos that created the divide between that region of space and the known galaxy. So that's also some cool new context that we've gotten to this, to the Ascendancy and to that time period. They recanonized the alliance between the Sith Empire and the Chiss, which I think is awesome. That's like a minor thing from the Old Republic that got put into Legends that I am I'm just happy is back. And now we've got a little more explanation into why it is we haven't seen Chiss in known space in quite some time, and it's because of the chaos. So yeah, that's it on everything I've got on this. Great book. Highly recommend the Ascendancy novel or trilogy for everyone. If you are a new fan of Thrawn, definitely go start with this first trilogy and then get into the Ascendancy. You can read these all 5 of these books are out. And if you pick up the first novel, the first trilogy, read that, and then read the 2 Ascendancy novels, you should be able to do that before November, or by November, when the final book in this trilogy comes out. And if you are a fan of Thrawn and are familiar with him, personally, I would recommend starting with Ascendancy, reading those novels first, and then getting into the newer trilogy, because the newer trilogy doesn't really showcase anything new from Thrawn. It's pretty much Thrawn as we knew him. The biggest changes are his relationships between Vader, the Emperor, and Tarkin. That's elaborated. I think that's the strong point of these books. His relationship with those people, with the leadership of the Empire, just him maneuvering through the Empire, and it taking place in a different time period than the Heir to the Empire did. Those are the strong points of it for people who are returning Thrawn fans, and for those who are just new to the character, these books are a great introduction to his character, because like I said, he's very much the same person that he has been. The biggest differences are his loyalties, and other than that, he's really the same character. But yeah, man, Zahn hadn't missed yet. That's so. Right now, as it stands, I would say this trilogy, I would put it above this one, only because of all of the new stuff that we getting on the Chiss. Not because the writing is any less than one or the other. I just feel like, for me personally, having that new lore and just a lot more new material to digest, it's a benefit for me. So like, I give it a plus, a bump up over the first trilogy. So not the original 90s, but this is a good one, and I think that the third book will follow suit and be as good, because I mean, Zahn is a really good writer and he understands this character, so I'm very confident that he will finish strong. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the last book. Okay, so this is going to be the episode for tonight. Thank you for joining me. Just to let you all know, I will be doing a stream for The Bad Batch. I'll do a review reaction to the premiere on Tuesday, May the 4th. It's a 70-minute episode, so I'm not complaining about the length at all. But I'll probably be doing something probably around 7 or 8 p.m. on this channel for giving my overall thoughts. JBM and some others may be joining me. I don't know. Haven't really scheduled everything with everyone yet. However, I plan to be here. So if you watch The Bad Batch on Tuesday, make sure you tune in at 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my recap and review of the show, and to speculate about what else is happening in the Star Wars galaxy and where the series could be going. We also be back next Saturday with Cookout on the channel, continuing our Marvel countdown or ranking of the Marvel films. We'll be doing the Sony movies and then anything else that we haven't done. We've already ranked the MCU movies, and we've already ranked the Fox Marvel movies. So if you want to see where we ranked everything, those videos are live on the channel. Go check those out. Make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. And as I always say, peace, love, blessings, and may the force be with you always.